The tall black gates of the Carrington estate swung open like a movie scene, the kind where you know whoever lives inside got money. Old money, new money, and probably the kind they don't even talk about. Everybody in Atlanta knew the Carrington name. Richard Carrington wasn't just a millionaire. He was the millionaire. Real estate mogul, investment king, the man who could shake up the whole city with a single phone call. But for all that money, Richard had one problem he couldn't solve with cash: his twins. Amira and Amir, 5 years old. Cute as buttons, sharp as tacks, but bad as all outdoors. No nanny lasted more than 2 weeks. Some ran off in tears. Others packed up without saying goodbye. One even quit in the middle of the night, leaving her uniform folded neatly on the grand staircase with a note. "May the Lord be with y'all, 'cause I can't." See, those twins had a gift for chaos. They painted the walls with ketchup, set frogs loose in the pool, and one time, Lord have mercy, they hacked into the mansion's smart home system and locked the chef in the pantry for 3 hours. Rich kids with too much time, no mom in the house, and a daddy who thought throwing iPads at the problem was enough. That's where Miss Loretta came in. Miss Loretta Jenkins wasn't nobody's idea of a nanny. She was 53 years old, with hips that carried the weight of 3 decades of hard work and a tongue sharp enough to cut glass. A widow from Decatur, she'd raised 4 kids of her own and half the neighborhood's too. She'd worked every job from cleaning houses to cooking in cafeterias, and she was known in her church as the woman who didn't take no foolishness. When her cousin told her the Carringtons were desperate for help, Miss Loretta just laughed. "Chilly, what I look like chasing after millionaire babies. I got corns on my feet and arthritis in my knees. They need somebody young, somebody spry." But rent was due, and her granddaughter needed braces. Money talks. So there she was, walking up that marble driveway with her Walmart flats clicking against a stone like she owned the place. The butler, Jameson, stiff as a broomstick, looked her up and down when she arrived. "You must be Loretta?" "That's Miss Loretta to you," she corrected, brushing past him like she'd been there all her life. The twins spotted her from the balcony. Amira whispered to her brother, "Bet she won't last 3 days." Amir grinned. "Bet she won't last 1. From the moment she stepped foot inside, it was like the twins activated full demon mode. Amira dumped a bowl of cereal on the Persian rug just to see what she'd do. Amir hid her purse in the koi pond out back. Most nannies would have screamed, called for backup, or marched right out the door. But Miss Loretta? She sat those kids down, arms crossed, and said, "Listen here, I done raised children with less money and more sense than y'all. You might be rich, but you ain't gonna run me. Now I'm gonna count to 3, and if y'all don't pick up this mess and bring my purse back, I'ma show you how the South really get down." The twins blinked. Nobody had ever talked to them like that before, not even their daddy. And just like that, something shifted. Day by day, Miss Loretta started doing the impossible. She didn't just wrangle those kids. She got them together. She made them clean up after themselves, say please and thank you, and even eat vegetables without bribery. She had a way of mixing love with discipline, sweet tea with vinegar. Instead of hiding behind their iPads, the twins started following her around the house, asking questions, listening to her stories about growing up in Georgia, and sneaking into the kitchen to help her bake cornbread. Richard Carrington noticed a change. For the first time in years, his children were laughing, sleeping through the night, and not driving every adult in the house to madness. He'd peek into the playroom and see them sitting cross-legged on the floor while Miss Loretta braided Amira's hair and told stories about her late husband, about faith, about struggle, about real life. But what Richard didn't know was this. Miss Loretta wasn't just saving his twins. She was about to shake up his whole household. Because behind that warm smile and yes, baby attitude, Miss Loretta had her own secrets. Secrets that would eventually put her at the center of the Carrington empire, whether she wanted it or not. And honey, let me tell you, when money, family, and secrets mix, somebody always gets burned. The first storm came 2 weeks later. Richard Carrington flew in late from New York, suit still sharp but his eyes heavy. He was used to coming home to chaos, broken lamps, screaming nannies, and kids running wild. But that night, Silence. He walked into the living room and found Amira fast asleep on the couch, a blanket draped neatly over them. Miss Loretta sat in the recliner with her knitting needles clacking, humming a gospel tune. Richard blinked. They went to bed on time. Miss Loretta didn't even look up. On time, with teeth brushed and prayer said, "You're welcome." He stared at her like she'd just performed an exorcism. "Ms. Jenkins, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, it's working. Consider yourself officially part of the Carrington household." Now, Richard thought he was a boss. He thought his money made the rules. But what he didn't know was Miss Loretta had already decided, if I'm here, I'ma do it my way. And her way? Oh, it didn't just affect the twins. It started creeping into every corner of that mansion. First, the staff noticed. Chef Paolo, an Italian man who thought seasoning meant salt and lemon, found Miss Loretta in the kitchen one morning frying chicken. "You cannot cook in here," he protested, flailing his hands. She side-eyed him, flipping the chicken like she'd been doing it all her life. "Listen, sweetheart, these babies been eating boiled asparagus and dry chicken breasts all week. That's child abuse where I'm from. Now, taste this and tell me it ain't better." Paolo tasted. He sat down. He never argued again. Next, the butler Jameson. He ran the house like a soldier, everything polished, proper, and silent. But after Miss Loretta arrived, he found himself humming old Motown tunes while dusting the banisters. She'd catch him mid-step and grin. "Uh-huh, Jameson. I knew you had some rhythm hiding in there." Even the twins' teachers at their fancy private school noticed a difference. Amira stopped talking back in class. Amir stopped biting kids. The principal called Richard personally. "Mr. Carrington, whatever change you've made at home, thank you." Richard was baffled. Miss Loretta just shrugged. "Baby, it ain't no magic. It's called raising children with love and boundaries. Something money can't buy." But here's where it got messy. One night, while putting the twins to bed, Amira whispered, "Miss Loretta, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sugar. Why don't we have a mommy like the other kids?" Miss Loretta froze. She hadn't expected that question. Richard never spoke of his late wife, and the staff treated it like forbidden territory. But kids always know when something's missing. "Your mama's watching over y'all," Loretta said softly, tucking Amira's curls behind her ear. "She's proud of you, and she's glad you got each other." Amira nodded, half satisfied. But when Loretta left the room, she noticed a photo frame turned face down on the dresser. Curiosity tugged at her. She lifted it. The woman in the picture was beautiful. Caramel skin, high cheekbones, eyes that looked straight into your soul. And in that moment, Miss Loretta's heart dropped into her stomach, because she knew that face. She hadn't seen it in over 20 years, but Lord help her, she knew. Richard Carrington's late wife was no stranger. In fact, she was somebody from Miss Loretta's past. And if that secret ever came to light, it could destroy everything. The next morning, Miss Loretta moved like nothing happened. She cooked breakfast, tied shoelaces, and reminded Amir not to stuff Legos in his pockets before school. But that picture, Lord, that picture, stayed burned in her mind. The woman's name was Vanessa Carrington. Back when Loretta was young, before arthritis and responsibility, before life settled her spirit, Vanessa wasn't just somebody she knew. She was practically family. They'd grown up in the same neighborhood, the same church choir, even chased the same boys in high school. But life had pulled them in different directions. Loretta had stayed in the South, raising kids and making ends meet, while Vanessa had reached higher, college, law school, and then marrying into money. But there was something else, something nobody knew except Loretta and Vanessa, something dangerous enough to crack the whole Carrington empire if it slipped out. And now, Loretta was raising Vanessa's babies. Meanwhile, the twins were falling harder for Miss Loretta every day. One Saturday morning, they barged into her room with pots and pans, yelling, "Wake up, Miss Loretta, time for pancakes." She groaned, pulling the covers over her head. Lord, these rich kids gone send me to glory sooner than arthritis. But she got up, and instead of fussing, She taught them how to crack eggs without shells, measure flour, and stir without splashing batter on the marble counters. Amira licked the spoon when she thought no one was looking. Amir dropped blueberries into the mix like he was making art. By the time Richard walked into the kitchen, still in his silk pajamas, he froze at the sight. His kids cooking with flour on their cheeks, Loretta commanding the room like she'd been there all her life. For a moment, he didn't feel like the millionaire mogul with business meetings stacked to the ceiling. He felt like a dad. He smiled without meaning to. Looks like I'm out of chef. Loretta shot him a look. Please, you couldn't afford to fire me if you tried. They both laughed. Something Richard hadn't done in a long time. But not everybody was happy about Miss Loretta's influence. One afternoon, while she was folding laundry, Jameson the butler cleared his throat. Miss Jenkins, may I have a word? She glanced up. Long as it ain't about me mixing your whites and colors, sure. He frowned. Mr. Carrington values your work, but do remember, your staff, not family. Loretta smirked, folding a pair of Amira's socks. Funny thing about family, Jameson. Blood don't always make it real. Love do. That shut him up, but his eyes narrowed. He didn't trust her. And in a house like the Carringtons, distrust was gasoline waiting for a spark. That night, Loretta sat on the porch swing, sipping her sweet tea while the cicadas hummed. She thought about Vanessa, about the secret they shared, and about what might happen if Richard ever learned the truth. Then she heard a small voice. Miss Loretta? It was Amira, clutching a blanket and rubbing her eyes. I had a bad dream. Can I sit with you? Loretta opened her arms, and the little girl climbed into her lap. Course you can, baby. What did you dream about? Amira whispered. That Mama was calling us, but we couldn't find her. Loretta's chest tightened. She kissed the top of Amira's curls. Don't you worry, sugar. Mama's always close by, and she left y'all somebody to watch over you till you're grown. Amira blinked. Who? Loretta smiled softly, hiding the storm behind her eyes. Me. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. And sooner or later, the truth about Vanessa, the truth only Loretta carried, was going to come knocking on that Carrington door. The Carrington estate had started to feel different. Where once there was stiff silence and robotic routines, now there was laughter echoing down marble halls. Staff who used to whisper and scurry now cracked jokes in the kitchen. Even Richard himself seemed lighter, though he tried hard to hide it under that businessman armor. And everybody knew who was at the center of it, Miss Loretta. But peace in a rich man's house never lasts long. One Friday evening, Richard threw a dinner party, his first in years. The city's elite gathered, dripping in diamonds and designer suits, sipping champagne by the fountain. The twins were supposed to be upstairs, out of sight, but Loretta, Lord help her, had other plans. These babies live here, don't they? She told Jameson, who nearly fainted at the suggestion. Then they gonna be part of this house, not locked away like secrets. So down the twins came, dressed to the nines. Amira in a little gold dress with bows in her hair, Amir in a tiny tuxedo, grinning like he owned the place. The guests melted. Oh, Richard, they're adorable. Oh, those cheeks. Oh, they look just like... And that's when it happened. One woman, slim, sharp, the kind who carried gossip in her purse, peered closer. My word, they looked exactly like Vanessa. The room froze. Richard's jaw tightened. Jameson shot Loretta a warning glance. But Loretta stepped forward, calm as a summer breeze. Course they do. That's their mama. And if you look real close, you'll see their daddy and them too. Ain't that right, Mr. Carrington? Her voice pulled the attention back to Richard, giving him room to smile politely and shift the conversation. Guests went back to sipping champagne, but Loretta could feel the tension in his shoulders from across the room. He was grateful to her. She could tell. But that woman's comment had cracked something open. The past was creeping closer. Later that night, after the last car pulled away and Jameson was collecting glasses, Richard found Loretta in the kitchen putting leftovers into Tupperware. You handle that well, he said, leaning against the counter. She didn't look up. Handled what? You know what? His eyes softened. You talk about them like you've known them their whole lives. Loretta finally met his gaze, her own steady. Children don't need just rules and money. They need somebody who sees them, and I see yours. For a moment, the air thickened between them. Richard wasn't used to women looking him dead in the eye like that, without fear, without needing something. Loretta just was strong, unshaken, and rooted. He almost said something more, but Amir came barreling into the kitchen, holding a stuffed dinosaur, yelling, "Miss Loretta? Miss Loretta, you forgot to kiss me goodnight." Loretta laughed, scooped him up, and kissed his forehead. "Go on now, baby. Bedtime." Richard watched the scene like an outsider in his own home. His kids, this woman, this warmth. It all felt like something he'd lost long ago, and that scared him more than any business deal ever could. Meanwhile, upstairs in her room, Loretta pulled open her nightstand drawer. Inside was a folded letter, yellow with age, written in Vanessa's elegant handwriting. She hadn't read it in years. But tonight, after that dinner party, her fingers itched to unfold it. She didn't. Not yet. Because once she did, there'd be no turning back. And the Carringtons weren't ready for the truth. The days rolled by, but the memory of that dinner party lingered like perfume after the guest is gone. The twins, of course, bounced back to their usual antics, Amir deciding he was a scientist, and nearly blowing up the bathroom mixing soap and soda, Amira trying to give the dog a manicure with nail polish. Loretta handled it all like she'd been born for it. Amir, sugar, if you're going to experiment, at least do it outside where I can hose you off. Amira, that poor dog didn't ask for pink toenails. Go get the polish remover before he runs through Mr. Carrington's office. The kids adored her more by the day. And truth be told, so did Richard Point one evening. He came home later than usual, tied loose, eyes tired. Loretta was in the den with the twins sprawled across her lap, reading them a bedtime story. Her voice was soft, warm, rolling like molasses. The children drifted off mid-page, their little chests rising and falling. Richard stood at the doorway, watching. "You're a miracle worker," he said finally. Loretta glanced up. "No, baby, just old-fashioned discipline and a whole lot of love. Something money can't buy." He chuckled, but his eyes lingered on her longer than they should have. Something was shifting. Something neither of them dared name. But not everyone in that house was rooting for Loretta. Jameson had been with the Carrington family for decades. He prided himself on loyalty, order, and the unspoken rules of wealth. To him, Loretta was disruptive. Too much influence, too much familiarity, too much power. He caught her in the hallway one afternoon. "Miss Jenkins, I'll be blunt. You are stepping into territory that does not belong to you. The Carringtons require service, not..." Loretta cut him off with a smirk. "Not love? Not care? Not honesty?" She folded her arms. "Funny, 'cause last I checked, service without those things is just slavery. And I don't do that." Jameson's jaw tightened. He didn't say another word, but the look in his eyes promised. This was far from over. That night, long after the house had quieted, Loretta sat on her bed with a folded letter in her hands. Her fingers trembled. She told herself she wouldn't read it. She told herself it was safer left alone. But temptation won. She unfolded it slowly, the paper fragile from time. Vanessa's handwriting swept across the page in loops and curls, elegant yet desperate. "Loretta, if you are reading this, it means I didn't find a way out." Loretta's breath caught. She pressed the letter to her chest, eyes squeezed shut. Memories flooded back. Late-night phone calls, whispered fears, promises between sisters of the heart. But before she could read another line, she heard footsteps in the hall. The door creaked open. It was Richard. "Miss Jenkins?" His voice was low. "You're awake?" Quick as lightning, Loretta stuffed the letter back into the drawer and forced a smile. "Couldn't sleep. These old knees don't let me rest long." He stepped inside, his expression softer than usual. "I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. For them. For me." Loretta swallowed hard, nodding. "You don't need to thank me, Mr. Carrington. That's what I'm here for." But when their eyes met in that dim light, The air between them thickened. Something unspoken passed. Neither moved. Neither spoke. And in that silence, the letter in the drawer burned like fire, waiting to spread. The next few weeks were a balancing act. To the outside world, the Carrington mansion was glowing again. Twins happier, Richard more relaxed, the household running smoother than ever. But inside, quiet storms were forming. Richard found himself drawn to Loretta more and more. It wasn't just the way she handled his kids, or the way her laugh filled the empty corners of the house. It was the way she made him feel human again. One night, he lingered by the kitchen after the twins had gone to bed. Loretta was wiping down the counters, humming Mahalia Jackson under her breath. "You remind me of my mother," he said suddenly. Loretta arched an eyebrow. "Lord, don't start with that." "No, I mean it," he chuckled. She was strong, didn't take nonsense, kept everyone in line, even my father. "You have that same energy." Loretta smirked, tossing the dish rag in the sink. "Careful, Mr. Carrington. You start comparing me to your mama, I'll really start bossing you around." They both laughed, but when their eyes met, the laughter slowed, softened, lingered. Something was there. Something neither of them was ready to admit. But Jameson was watching, always watching. He'd been with the Carringtons long, before Vanessa married into the family, and he considered himself the guardian of the Carrington legacy. In his eyes, Loretta was dangerous, not because of what she did, but because of what she knew. One afternoon, he slipped into her room under the pretense of routine inspection. He glanced around, eyes sharp as knives, until he spotted the nightstand drawer. He opened it. The letter was there, folded, fragile, waiting. Before he could pick it up, he heard footsteps coming down the hall. Quickly, he shut the drawer and straightened himself just as Loretta walked in, holding a basket of laundry. "What you doing in my room, Jameson?" she asked, voice cool. "Ensuring the staff quarters remain in proper condition," he replied stiffly. Loretta narrowed her eyes. "Mom, well, my room's just fine. Now, unless you plan on folding these towels, you can see yourself out." Jameson gave a tight smile, bowed slightly, and left. But Loretta's heart was racing. He was sniffing around too close to her truth. That night, after everyone was asleep, she pulled the letter back out. She needed to remind herself why she couldn't let Jameson or Richard ever see it. She read further. "If Richard ever finds out what I've done, it will destroy him. But I had no choice, Loretta. You're the only one I can trust. Promise me you'll keep this between us. Promise me you'll protect the twins if I can't." Tears blurred her eyes. She whispered into the dark, "I promised. Vanessa, I promise." She folded the letter carefully, tucked it away again, and prayed Jameson hadn't seen enough to grow suspicious. But in a house like this, secrets had a way of clawing to the surface. And between Richard's growing affection, Jameson's watchful eye, and two curious twins who loved to snoop, Loretta knew it was only a matter of time before the truth exploded. And when it did, the Carrington name might never recover. Saturday morning in the Carrington mansion was usually quiet, but not this one. Amira had decided she was a detective. She tied one of her daddy's silk ties around her head like a bandana, grabbed a magnifying glass from her toy set, and announced, "I'm solving mysteries today." Amir, never wanting to be left out, declared himself her assistant scientist. And the first case? Finding Mommy. They snuck around the house, opening closets, peeking under couches, even interrogating Jameson, who nearly choked on his tea when Amira demanded, "What do you know about Vanessa Carrington?" "Your mother was a remarkable woman," he replied tightly, straightening his tie. "Now run along, Miss Amira." But the seed was planted. Meanwhile, Loretta was in the garden picking tomatoes when Richard came out, sleeves rolled up, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. "You ever take a break?" he asked, handing her one. She sipped, squinting at him in the sun. "You ever roll up your sleeves without trying to look like a magazine ad?" He laughed. And for a moment, he wasn't Richard Carrington the mogul. He was just a man, standing in his backyard, enjoying the company of a woman who saw right through him. "You've changed this house, Loretta," he said quietly. "I don't know how you did it, but thank you." Loretta's chest tightened. She tried to play it off with a smirk. "Don't thank me yet. These kids still got tricks up their sleeves. But when their eyes met, it lingered. The warmth of the sun, the closeness, the unspoken things simmering between them. It all hung heavy in the air. For a heartbeat too long, it felt like he might lean closer. But before either of them moved, Amira's voice rang out across the garden. "Daddy, Miss Loretta, we found something." The twins came running, Amir clutching a shoebox they dug out of the attic. Dust puffed into the air as they plopped it onto the patio table. Inside were old photographs. Vanessa, young and radiant, smiling at the camera. Vanessa holding the twins as babies. Vanessa with Richard at some gala. And one picture that made Loretta's blood run cold. It was Vanessa standing arm in arm with her. "Loretta," Amira squinted at it. "Miss Loretta, why are you with Mommy in this picture?" The world seemed to freeze. Richard's eyes snapped to Loretta, confusion flickering into suspicion. "You knew her?" he asked, voice sharp. Loretta's throat went dry. She forced a smile, steady but thin. "Baby Atlanta Small. Everybody know everybody." But Richard's gaze didn't waver, and the twins weren't buying the easy answer either. Loretta excused herself quickly, carrying the box inside, her hands trembling. She knew the truth was crawling closer. The past was coming for her, whether she was ready or not. And from the shadows of the garden, Jameson watched the whole scene unfold, his lips curling into the faintest of smiles. Because if there was one thing he loved more than loyalty, it was leverage. The air in the Carrington mansion grew heavy after that day in the garden. Richard didn't ask right away, but his silence was worse than anger. Loretta knew it was only a matter of time. And she was right. One night, after the twins were asleep, Richard called her into his study. The fire crackled low, his face shadowed but stern. "Loretta," he said, voice calm but cutting. "How long were you planning on keeping this from me? You and Vanessa, what were you to each other?" Loretta took a deep breath, sat down, and for the first time since she stepped into that mansion, told the truth. "Me and Vanessa grew up like sisters. Same choir, same streets, same dreams. But when she married you, she carried a secret she was too scared to tell anybody else. A secret that would have ruined her in this house. And she begged me to keep it." Richard leaned forward. "What secret?" Loretta's eyes watered. "She was sick, Richard, long before the twins. She hid it from you, from everybody. She didn't want you to see her weak. Didn't want the world to say she only made it into this life to die young. That letter I keep, it's her last request. She asked me to protect the twins because she knew her time was shorter than she let on." Richard froze, pain flashing across his face. She knew?" "Yes," Loretta whispered. "She knew, and she couldn't bring herself to burden you with it. She made me promise not to tell, and I kept that promise. Until now." The room was silent, except for the fire popping. Finally, Richard stood, pacing, hands gripping his hair. "All this time, I thought she was taken from me too soon. And you're saying she chose to suffer in silence?" Loretta's voice broke. "She loved you. She loved those babies. She didn't want y'all's last memories of her to be hospitals and pain." Richard turned toward her, eyes glassy. For a moment, he was no mogul, no millionaire, just a man broken by truth. And then he did something Loretta didn't expect. He walked over, took her hand, and said quietly, "Thank you for carrying that weight, for raising my children when I couldn't, for being here when everything was falling apart." The weeks that followed were different. The truth didn't break the Carrington household. It healed it. Richard shared Vanessa's story with the twins in a way they could understand. And Loretta was right there, guiding them through tears and questions. Jameson tried once to use a photo and let her leverage, but Richard shut him down cold. "Jameson," he said, steel in his voice, "Loretta isn't just staff. She's family. You do well to remember that." The butler bowed, but the defeat in his eyes was clear point one Sunday afternoon. The Carrington mansion didn't feel like a mansion at all. The twins were in the yard chasing bubbles. The smell of fried chicken drifted from the kitchen, and Richard and Loretta sat on the porch sipping sweet tea. "You know," Richard said, glancing at her with a small smile, Vanessa was right about one thing. Loretta raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" She said once that if anything ever happened to her, the only person she'd trust with her children was you. Loretta swallowed hard, her heart full. "Then I guess I did right by her." Richard reached over, covered her hand with his, and held it there. No rush, no promises, just understanding. The twins' laughter rang through the air, bright and free. For the first time in years, the Carringtons weren't just surviving, they were whole. And it was all because one woman, who was never supposed to last in that house, did the impossible. Miss Loretta. The end. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more video. And do like, share, and comment below.